All right, guys, welcome back. So now that we know the 5 things that we need to sketch the graph of the equation y equals x squared plus 3x plus 2, we're going to now go ahead and do that. Let's slide this over here so we can look at the checklist while we work. All right, so the first thing you need to do is draw the axes and ensure that they are labeled. So that is very important. We're going to draw the axes, and because I know that the roots are -2 and -1, I know that the curve is going to be predominantly on the left side of the y-axis, because the x values are -2 and -1. So when I draw, I'm just going to kind of lean towards the left-hand side for good reason. So I'm just going to draw the y-axis a little bit to the right, just like that, and the x-axis horizontal. Now remember, this is a sketch, so as long as the values make sense with what you're doing, then you're good to go. So always label your axes, y-axis and the x-axis. Now the first thing that you're going to remember is that you're going to get a smile, and the actual first set of values that you want to put onto the curve, onto the graph, is the actual roots. So and it must be, you're not measuring and you're not using a ruler, but you just want to make sure that it makes sense in a sense. All right, so essentially -1 goes there, and of course we're going to just indicate -2 here. All right, it's just a rough estimate. All right, now that's the first thing that goes on. All right, so this would be 0, -1, -2, and so on. It's a sketch. Now I've put this on the graph, so I've gotten this out of the way, so I've indicated the roots. Now the next thing I want to do is to put on the line of symmetry. Now the line of symmetry is x equals -3/2, which is the same thing as x equals -1.5, if you want to look at it as a decimal. And the line of symmetry always goes exactly in the middle of the two roots. So what I'm simply going to do is just to get a line that is smack in the middle. It's always, the line of symmetry is always exactly in the middle of the two roots, and the two roots are -2 and -1. So what I'm simply going to do is I'm just going to ensure that the line of symmetry goes smack in the middle. And it makes sense that it's actually in the middle because it's -1.5. You'll see that the opposite value of h, meaning the negative value of h, right, is always going to be in the middle. Line of symmetry is always smack in the middle. It's always smack in the middle of the two roots, exactly in the middle. So this is now out of the way. So what I'm doing is I'm giving you a suggestion as to how you go about putting on the sketch using the particular pieces of information in the way that I'm doing it now, so it's easier for you. The next thing that we want to do is establish the minimum point in this case. And the reason why it's minimum is because we're having a smile. If we were having a frown, then k would be a maximum value. But the minimum value is -1/4, and it's also the same if you were to look at it as a decimal, -0.25. And obviously going on the y-axis, this would be 0, and this would be positive values up here, and these would be negative values down here. So I'm simply just going to do an estimate again of where that value would be. So I'm just going to just indicate that roughly. All right. Remember, it's a sketch. So I'm just going to indicate that's -1/4. All right. So because it's the minimum point of the curve, which means the lowest point of the curve, I'm going to take it across now to touch the line of symmetry, which makes here the lowest point of the curve right here. All right, just indicating that the lowest point of the curve would be right there. So having done that now, this is going to come into play automatically, because when you do the curve, you're going to see that it essentially passes through or cuts the y-axis at positive 2. So I'm simply going to get the curve done now. So as best as you can using freehand, you're not to use a ruler to draw the curve whatsoever. So I'm just going to attempt, and it's a sketch, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but you should try to avoid the little wobbles essentially. Alright, so something looking like that, and in essence, wherever it cuts the y-axis should be in keeping with this, and obviously it cuts the y-axis at a positive value, and that value is 2, and all positive values are up here, so we just indicate that as 2. So looking at this, this is essentially the sketch, and if you want to emphasize that the value, the equation of the line of symmetry, just to emphasize that, is x equals, and the reason why it's x equal is because the value, which is negative 1.5, is on the x-axis. So the equation always begins with x equal and then the opposite in terms of the value for h, and we know that h was 3 over 2, so it will be x equal negative 3 over 2, and it clearly makes sense. Remember, h, when we calculated h was 3 over 2, and it has to be, the line of symmetry would have to pass through the value negative 1.5, because obviously based on the roots, negative 2 and negative 1, the line of symmetry couldn't be positive 1.5 here, because obviously it couldn't pass through, or it couldn't cut the parabola in half, and that is why it's the opposite sign of h. So x would be equal to negative h essentially. So this is an idea of a sketch, and that is how you proceed in doing it. And just use a checklist as you're following and going by. Indicate from the information whether a is positive or negative. If it's positive, it's going to be a smile. The next thing you do is determine the roots. All right. Afterwards, the equation of the line of symmetry, finding h, and then obviously the equation of the line of symmetry is x equals negative h. You have then, based on this, you will know whether k is maximum or minimum. Find the value of k, and then you have an idea where the top or lowest point of the curve is, and then c, the value of c is 2 here, and then that would indicate where the curve or the parabola will cut the y-axis. So this is an example of a sketch of a parabola, and I hope you guys essentially found the video insightful. When we come back again, we look at other examples, so you have a little bit more of a dynamic feel in terms of how to do this. The next example we're actually going to look at is one that is already placed in the completed square form, and we're going to show you how easy it is to determine these things and what would be essentially the challenge. And you're actually going to also learn something new and interesting when we're actually looking at sketching the graph of a quadratic equation, but the quadratic equation is going to be in completed square form. So I hope you guys found this video insightful, and I'll see you guys on the next video.